Hi everybody. Could everyone stand up please? Quickly, Cam. Okay. All right, people at the back, you might want to come a bit further. All right, sit down if you give this is your personal food scraps, if you give it to animals at home like chickens, dogs, worms, other pets. Okay, sit down if you compost, if you have a bokashi bin, sit down if you use a green cone, sit down if you have a council FOGO service. Okay, so those standing, what do you do with your food scraps? In the garbage bin? Is that any other things? Have I missed anything? Okay, and is that because you don't have a FOGO service at your council? If you had a FOGO service, would you use it? Is there anyone that would, okay, sit down if you would use it. Stay standing if you wouldn't use it. Like, if you'd be honest. Is there anyone standing at the back? You wouldn't use it? You would? Okay, you're just going to stand there. Okay. All right, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your honesty. Now, those people from New South Wales, hands up. Councils, if you're from a council, hands up. Oh, I've got a lot more councils than I've got flyers. Jess has got a flyer here which has got the details of the guide that we've developed for councils, and she can hand that out to you at the end of this if you like. It's got the details, but it's all on our website, so you can download it. We didn't print multiple copies. So I just wanted to talk today about the support that we provide to local government in Victoria. So I'm from the Metropolitan Waste and Resource Recovery Group, and yeah, this is a photo from one of our councils. This is a photo from Moonee Valley City Council. What do you notice about the photo that's different to other photos you've seen of FOGO? Yes? It's got newspaper. Oh my gosh. And you know, when I was devising the guide, I was looking at, in Victoria, we didn't have a service facility that took bags for our FOGO services. So we've been promoting the use of newspaper. And I was investigating, well, how do you get that message out there? Because people don't necessarily use newspaper anymore. Everyone's online and that sort of thing. So, but the idea I saw online was some really cool videos of kids making hats and then teaching their parents, you make the hat and then you put that in your bin and then that's used for your FOGO. So it's like the old, you know, hats that used to make out of newspaper, the pirate hats, yeah. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. But I really like this concept of thinking it through the messaging with the community around food and garden organics, because who is the audience that we're trying to talk to? Who are we talking to with FOGO? So there's half of the people sat down that are already putting food in, composting, or, you know, in giving it to their chickens. So what we wanted to do at Metro is do a bit of research to find out more about the people and what they think about FOGO. But just to give you a bit of context, so this is Victoria. We're the Metropolitan Waste Resource Recovery Group, so we deal with 31 councils in our group. A bit like you've got your rocks up here, the S-rocks and all of those sort of groups. We deal with the 31 metropolitan councils in Melbourne. And we have also partners across the regions. So you'll see there we've got all the other regional groups. You might have heard some of them speak at the events, at the conference. We deal with state government, DELP, which is the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, EPA, Sustainability Victoria. So they're our key portfolio partners. We have a plan to reduce waste going to landfill, and we have targets around organics, but our biggest issue has been around providing facilities for the organics to go to, because a while back a lot of our facilities were closed down because we didn't have in-vessel type facilities. We only had windrow facilities that were close to houses, and the odour was getting a bit out of control and people weren't very happy, so they had to close them down. So we've had a slower approach to FOGO than what you've had in other states. Adelaide in particular, or in South Australia, have been quite leading in this, and also in New South Wales. So we had to go into developing contracts to create that capacity for the organics to get processed, and that's what Metropolitan Waste Resource Recovery Group has been working on. Is Greg here today? Greg Mulcahy? He's not in the audience, but if you meet Greg, he runs the team that does all the contracts with the councils and with the processors and also with the collectors. And I think Solo's here, and Solo's one of our collectors in Glen Eira, which is the latest council to go FOGO in Metropolitan Melbourne. We've all seen these breakdowns. So in the guide that I've produced on our website, there's some cool examples. But one of the things that's really interesting about this is when I'm working with councils and we talk about getting baseline data, it's really important to get those audits and that baseline data, and we need that consistent, and I've heard this message, consistent data and consistent approaches. So Sustainability Victoria has a guide to doing audits, and all of our councils and those doing audits use that guide. And through the Love Food Hate Waste, they've actually been looking at avoidable food waste in those audits as well. And EC Sustainable has done a lot of those baseline audits for that Love Food Hate Waste program in Victoria. So why go FOGO? I don't really have to tell you guys, you probably understand all of this, that we need to get, obviously, the organics out of landfill. And there's a huge opportunity to divert that material from the red bin to the green bin. However, not all of our bins in Victoria are under the standards. So some councils have orange organics lids. Some councils have red recycling lids. Oh my gosh. We haven't had the money to give that to all of the councils to say, just change your bin colour so we can all get at least a consistent bin colour so we can get a consistent message out there. I mean, if we could change anything, if I could be, you know, the Premier for the day, that's what I'd do. Just give everyone the same bin colour lids to start the ability to get consistency. How hard could that be? Really? Okay. Emissions from food waste, we know that that's an issue. We know from the War on Waste that 1 in 5 shopping bags is wasted and goes to landfill. Sustainability Victoria's provided some data on how many tonnes that is going to landfill. So it is a huge problem, and obviously we need to reduce that. I'm now actually working more on the C&I food waste in my new role when I wrote this guide. So now I'm working more with businesses. So we're doing compositional audits of a lot of the food and grocery and accommodation and those sorts of caterers and things like that now in Metro to get some baseline data that we can then start developing some interventions in the C&I space. So that's my next task. But this is really cool. So when councils have a look at their own emissions and they have to now start looking at reporting on their own emissions, food waste is the opportunity. They can look at their community emissions. They can then look at, it's an easy one to influence. It's an easy one to help reduce in terms of community emissions. So this is City of Glen Eira's emissions profile for their community emissions strategy. And that was the driver for them. So different drivers for FOGO, sometimes it's councillors, sometimes it's the community, like banging on the door. We want this. We've been to Byron Shire, they've got it. We've been down to Bass Coast Shire, they've got it. Why haven't we got it in our council? So that's been a big push from a lot of the community, but also a lot of councils doing their greenhouse emissions and community emissions strategies. Obviously, Kat mentioned this, and we all are really excited that we have a national food waste strategy, and we look forward to finding out more about the implementation plan for that. But I'm not too sure how many of you know about this one. So this is the circular food economy. So I've been talking a lot about circular. So I came across the what Alan MacArthur's doing with major cities. They're setting up major cities on a circular food economy program, and I think this is something we should all look at. So if you go onto the Alan MacArthur Foundation website and have a look at their circular economy for food and their cities program that they're developing, they're setting up that program with a lot of major cities. We've got to think more than it's just about, the byproducts. It's also about the inputs and the healthy communities that we want. So I really love this model. The other thing, when I was researching on that website for the guide, I found that they talk about we've only got 60 harvests left. Are we going to run out of food? There's a question. Are we going to run out of food? Because of the way we've been degrading our soil. and the erosion, because we don't have the soil, it's not the holding capacity because it hasn't got the carbon in it, hasn't got that, it's eroding a lot faster. So what I've found, and from forums I've been to recently, talking to farmers that are putting the organics back into their soil, they've actually, like in Mildura, they had 21 days over 40 degrees in the last, over summer, and those farmers found that their ability to survive the drought, they only lost 10% of their harvest versus 30% of the harvest from farmers that weren't doing it. I'm just going to skip through. So these are just the network that we've built. These are the councils in Metro that are doing trials, doing FOGO, or in feasibility. So we're getting this movement and shift and momentum. So the guide was developed to help them. In terms of behaviours around organics and food behaviours, we ran a forum or a workshop for a lot of our councils looking at behaviour change, thinking about the actions back in the home. City of Wodonga's done a great program in the Halve Waste program, and with Albury as well, looking at what are the behaviours we have to target and how do we get that uplift, because we can get a certain amount of food out through just general information and communications and videos and stuff, but we actually really need to be thinking through the barriers and the behaviours that we can shift. And thinking about, who we're targeting. So obviously the person producing the food scraps in the cooking. So in that preparation, thinking about the family and all the other people coming to home where they're not, used to this process. So how do you get them involved when they're doing the plate scrapings? And then the cleaning out of the fridge, because that's where we get a lot of the contamination through plastics and other materials that are getting put into the system. So just thinking through those different entry points. And also creating that circular element in terms of councils buying back the material or taking the material back and giving it back to their residents and utilising it. Moonee Valley's done that program, which is fabulous. MRA produced this. I've actually adapted it and added a few bits to it and put it on a bit of a ladder. So you can see that Bass Coast Shire Council's leading the way in Victoria. They've just rolled out their FOGO. They went directly with changed over to a fortnightly waste and a weekly weekly FOGO. There was a bit of backlash, but the community are now sort of getting on with it, and they have a lot of visitors coming to the area, so there's a lot of engagement now looking at how they deal with the visitors. How am I going? 1 minute. Oh, wow. Okay, we've got the Back to Earth initiative, which is a program. We don't have a statewide campaign around organics, but I think this is sort of the default one that Metro's created, and I'll just quickly show you this.
The Back to Earth initiative promotes the recycling of organics through the municipal collection system. So your wheelie bin at home, all the green organics goes into the bin and it comes to us, and we're able to produce a really high-grade compost. Getting organics to a facility like here means that we can recycle it and get it out to the farms, which grow the food, which then bring it back to the city for you to eat.
You see the structure of the soil change immediately. When it rains, the moisture goes in, you can see air, you can see pathways where worms have worked. The soil has more humus, so when you pick up the soil, it's more tacky and sticky. And this sort of soil that's benefited from compost has a greater ability to have the plant uptake nutrients.
We started using organic compost 2 years ago now. We're having more water retention, so we're using less water to grow our crop. We're also seeing more microbiological activity happening in the soil, requiring less fertilisers each year.
To grow good quality crops, we need to replace the nutrients that we take off the field each year, every time we harvest. Circling organic matter and organic nutrients and making sure that it goes back into our soils is the key way to look after the short term, and it's to look after the long term, which is being able to grow good crops forever.
Residents can play a simple part in this process by ensuring they put the right thing in their bin. A lot of organics that comes in is contaminated with plastic and other contaminants. All of these need to be removed before we can compost. We then shred it down to a finer grade, load it into these vessels, and then we monitor that process using a computer system which optimises the composting environment. We achieve quite high temperatures in the order of 60-70 degrees Celsius to ensure that we've destroyed all the weed seeds, plant pathogens and other diseases that may be present in the material, which then makes it safe for our farmers to use in their soil.
It's enormously beneficial to have this basis of material that we can work. There's a necessity for that to find a home, and the better home it finds, the better for the product and the better for the community who's providing that material, the people who are putting that in their bins at home.
Okay, so the only thing I wanted to just talk about was the fact that who we're talking to, the people in the middle, not the early adopters, the early and late majority of people that we need to think about what needs to be done, and we do a lot of social research. So from that we've worked out what's the best practice. We've put that into the guide. We've sort of said, you know, here's some guidelines for councils. Think about what everyone's done. We've got case studies. We've got a whole lot of information around. If I can just quickly get the diagram. Sorry. There. The steps to take. And so, you know, hearing these case studies of what's worked and what hasn't worked, and then running forums and behaviour change training and design training with the councils, business case development, all of that, that's the sort of thing that we've been doing. So I could talk about this all day, but anyway, I'll finish now. Thank you so much for your time.